3. Go ahead.
All right, thank you everybody for coming here. We're going to be talking about the stormwater utility program for the Borough of Conshohocken and Borough of Conshohocken Authority. My name is Tyler Erb. I work with HRG. We assisted the authority in implementing the utility program, developing the budget and rates and all the things that we're going to be discussing this evening. I have Ed Mongan over here, who is the operations manager for the authority. And Brent Wagner is on the phone. I believe he has the ability to answer questions. Should you guys have any questions for him, and he is the authority, what's the
Executive Director
executive director
Of what?
of the authority.
of the wastewater authority, sewer authority.
So without further ado, I will share my screen here. Live, good. All right.
You guys are contracted to do this by the authority?
Correct.
Borough.
Authority.
By the authority.
Authority, okay.
All right, so the agenda for this evening, we're just gonna do a broad kind of stormwater overview. Then we'll talk about the stormwater program budget, funding sources for the program, the credits and appeals process, what's next, and then at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. I do ask that you wait until the end to ask any questions. We will have as much time as we need to answer your questions, but we want to make sure that we capture all of the questions, both in the recording, as well as give Ed a chance to jot everything down, should we need to come back to anything. So stormwater, what is it and why do we worry about it? Why are we worried about it now? Stormwater is water that originates from precipitation. So whatever form that might take, rain, sleet, snow, ice melt, anything of that nature is considered stormwater. We care about it for a variety of reasons. First and foremost is really that it can carry pollutants, and typically does carry pollutants through the stormwater infrastructure, and it goes untreated into our local waterways. The main parts of the pollutants, I should say, that we are concerned with are nitrogen, phosphorus, and primarily sediment at this point. And the reason those three are the main issues are because of the MS4 program. That stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, M4Ss. And there's a program that DEP has that requires municipalities to implement this MS4 program, reducing the pollutants that enter our local water. The stormwater, when it hits impervious surfaces, it creates a more substantial velocity that increases erosion when it enters the local waterways. It also is carrying all those pollutants along with it that go again untreated into those local waterways. So how did we get here? This is really part of the Chesapeake Bay Agreement, which goes back to 1983. We aren't in the Chesapeake Bay watershed here, but that kind of set the framework for this program across the state and other states as well, all the Chesapeake Bay states really. But it really goes back to the Clean Water Act at the federal level. So this is being implemented at the state level, but it's really because of the federal requirements that are being pushed to the state, and then pushed to the local municipality, and then to everybody within the municipalities to implement. So we are supposed to, as a state, reach our goals by 2023. Now, DEP is currently in discussions with the EPA because we're a little bit behind the 8 ball to meet those requirements. So they're working out, what comes next. And at this point, I don't have any additional information on what that next chapter looks like, outside of, I know there will be a next chapter. But currently, we're looking at that 10% reduction in sediment, 5% in phosphorus, and 3% in nitrogen. And all MS4 municipalities have to meet those reductions. Now, that is overall reductions, right? For, in this case, Conshohocken Borough, we took a loading rate for the borough, decided how much sediment was going to be entering our system based on those loading rates and how much impervious existed, how much pervious existed, a couple other factors as well, that over the course of a year, it's X amount of pounds of sediment that are entering the system. And we have to reduce that amount by that 10% across the borough. So in addition to the requirements of the reductions that are part of the PRP or pollutant reduction plan, there's also these minimum control measures. So there's 6 of them. 1 and 2 really kind of go hand in hand. So that's public education and public outreach. It's making sure that residents and property owners within the municipality are educated on stormwater. They have the opportunity to provide input on stormwater related situations such as stormwater ordinances or pollutant reduction plan development, things of this nature as well. The education is really just making sure that the individuals of the community have the opportunity to learn about stormwater and why we need to care about it, what actions they can take to improve water quality, et cetera. MCM3 is illicit discharge detection and elimination. That requires mapping of the stormwater system, inspections of outfalls, so where the storm system ends and enters the waterway, that is considered an outfall. There's a couple of caveats, but I won't bore you with all of those details. It's a requirement of inspecting those locations to see if anything is flowing through the system that shouldn't be. If there is flows that are suspected to be pollutants, testing needs to occur and remediation after determining what the pollutant is and the cause of that pollutant needs to occur. Additionally, the reporting of illicit discharges is required. So an illicit discharge is really anything that enters our storm system that isn't stormwater. So the example that I like to use, albeit kind of extreme, but it does happen. Let's say somebody's changing their oil in their car. Once they have that pan full of oil, they, instead of taking it to an auto parts store to be recycled, they dump it into an inlet. That then goes untreated into our local waterways. That's an illicit discharge. But things like grass clippings are also considered illicit discharge because they have high levels of nitrogen and phosphorus, which create issues in the ecosystem of the local waterways. Additionally, they have the potential to clog the system and cause destruction through flooding, essentially. MCM4 is construction site runoff. So that is making sure that any active construction sites have proper erosion and sedimentation controls in place, silt sock, fencing, whatever would be required for that site, so that when it rains during an active construction site, that chocolate milk water, as I like to call it, doesn't run off of the site, the sediment staying on site, the water is able to leave, but all the soil is staying where it's supposed to be. MCM5 is post-construction stormwater management, so that is after a construction site is completed, it has, assuming it has the requirement of some level of stormwater controls as part of that development, it is the continuation of ensuring that best management practice, or BMP, mitigating the site's impact on stormwater, is continuing to function as it should. So after everything is completed, over the next infinite amount of years, potentially, making sure that if it's filling up with sediment, that sediment's then removed and it's able to fill back up. If it's a vegetated BMP, that the vegetation is continuing to thrive as it should, invasives aren't coming in. There aren't issues with any of the infrastructure associated with it, et cetera. MCM6 then is good housekeeping, and that's really the opportunity to look inward as far as the MS4 program goes, and ensure that the borough and the authority are doing everything that they should be doing to make sure that water quality is protected as well. A prime example of that is currently going out and salting the roads, right? Everybody likes likes their roads to be clear during a snowstorm, after a snowstorm, but making sure that everything is calibrated correctly, so it's dispensing the correct amount of salt. We aren't over applying salt, having those sorts of issues. So in the most recent MS4 permit, we've had the addition of the PRP. So that's new. It's the requirement to reduce those pollutants, sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus that I was talking about earlier. We have those 6 MCMs that were required to be, and this is all an unfunded mandate from the federal government. Part of the permit does say that the permittee shall develop and maintain adequate legal authorities and shall maintain adequate funding and staffing to implement this general permit. So that is included in the permit that is issued by the state and is essentially them saying that the inability to pay for the program is not an excuse to not implement the program. And failure to implement the program results in, it can result in fines, it can result in the inability to apply for grant funding and impact our funding abilities down the road. And other municipalities that have not complied with this permit have gotten significant fines, upwards of $300,000+, and that's after there was lawyers in negotiating the cost of those fines. So as part of this process, we went through the existing stormwater program, compared it to what the optimal stormwater program would look like. And when I say optimal, I don't mean the best of everything, let's spare no expense. It is optimal in the sense of what makes sense for Conshohocken, as far as what issues we have, what needs to be addressed, and how we can ensure that everything is maintained as it should be moving forward. So in developing that and reviewing all of that information, we came up with 5 issues that are leading us to having to implement this program and have the MS4 requirements upon us as well. So the first one is polluted streams and increased flooding. The second is the increased regulations. We have to implement that PRP. Those projects that we need to implement are not cheap. We have aging infrastructure. Some of that infrastructure is still very old. A condition assessment was done a couple of years back. But the thing about stormwater infrastructure is the condition can change potentially overnight, depending on the condition of the infrastructure and what's entering that system. It's very easy for the infrastructure to get clogged or something of that nature that needs to be addressed very quickly. Other situations is the corrugated metal pipe rotting out, not having a bottom, potentially having collapses in the road, sinkholes, things of that nature. Up until this point, the maintenance that has been able to be performed was limited by the budget. And stormwater is one of those things where it's out of sight, out of mind, to a certain extent at least. So road paving, things of that nature definitely take precedence over an infrastructure that you aren't able to see on a regular basis. You can see a pothole forming and the issues around that. Unless you are opening up inlets and looking and trying to find the issues for stormwater, you're not going to find them until it's essentially too late. For perspective on that, we in the borough here have 11 miles of pipe roughly, and then we also have the open channels, and what I mean by that is any runoff areas on the sides of streets or anything of that nature that isn't being piped but is conveying stormwater. That is also part of our system. We have outfall locations that need to be maintained. We have all of the various structures, the inlets and things that also need to be maintained and ensure that those are functioning as they should. The fourth issue is borough growth. So there's more runoff that needs to be managed and more infrastructure that we have to maintain. The fifth challenge is funding, being able to pay for all these things that need to be done. So in looking through that, reviewing the existing program, and finding that optimal program, we developed some costs for various assortment of projects that need to be implemented, including the PRP projects, as well as just general maintenance of our system. And when I say maintenance, I mean repair, replacement, but also addition if necessary. So our operation and maintenance costs are $595,000 roughly. Capital improvement costs are $230,000, bringing us to a total annual budget of about $825,000. So the capital improvements portion of that is really really the larger scale projects. So that isn't just going out and replacing an inlet, replacing a pipe run. That is making sure that the large scale multi-street pipe replacements, things of that nature are being funded. The operation and maintenance portion of the budget is the smaller scale project. So going out, doing the inspections, maintaining the system on a regular basis, those sorts of things.
What was the capital improvement per year again?
Sure, it was $230,000 for capital improvements, and then operation and maintenance was $595 to have a total annual of $825.
We'll get that back up there for you.
And that's rough cost with rounding.
Up or down?
Whichever way the numbers told me to run. Just gonna take a brief pause here, having technical issues for those online.
I need to bring comment over 6 o'clock.
Sure. If you're gonna make a comment, then please don't do voting.
I'd rather not. I have no physical issues.
I guess you can talk about.
I want to thank you. What you said so far, most of it was not told last month. Instead, they were almost browbeating us to the point that we would. What the heck is going on? Like we were being charged with things that were already done.
Talk to the microphone, I'm sorry,
I'm not
just.
going to use the microphone. So
Well,
What
I
do
feel
you
like
think
people
should-
online might want to hear what you have to say.
they should be here. The
Maybe-
watershed, and what you're talking about is the general watershed, how these rivers then flow into the larger areas, and that's what, is a lot of the problem, especially in New Jersey, with all the farming they do there, and that floods quite a bit over there. But it is true, there's a lot of fertilizer that is being spread unnecessarily, like people like, is it green thumb or whatever it's called? They're constantly spraying lots, and that's a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen and everything else, and I agree with you there. And what you said was very educational, very informing, and I thank you for it. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
No, I thank you. What we had last week or last month was spaces. Unusual. Very little.
Any board members on the phone at all, or just?
I'm not sure who's partaking of them.
It's just on the phone.
There's someone on the phone, but I don't know if he,
It's Brent.
yeah, he's not a board member.
Okay,
Is
so
it
we are,
streaming so that Conshohocken residents can listen in also?
it is a live meeting, it is being recorded as well, and I believe it will be posted, around, I'm not in charge. Okay, so continuing on, we have our annual budget of about $825,000 per year. So to achieve that budget, a flight was done of the borough, and there was, it's called aerial orthophotography. So essentially, super high definition aerial imagery that we can go in. It takes it from multiple angles. You can go in, take a look, essentially in a 3D vision of the area, map out the impervious areas on each property within GIS. And that's just a software online for mapping, etc. So in doing that, we were able to take a look at all the impervious area within the borough, how it broke out on properties. And looked at a handful of different rate structures, and ultimately landed on the ERU or equivalent residential unit rate structure. So what that means is, there are two classifications of properties within the borough: single-family residential and non-single-family residential. And that is based off of land use codes from the county. The single-family residential properties will all pay the same amount, one ERU, one equivalent residential unit, which will be roughly $10 per month. The other properties, the non-single-family residential, but this encompasses all nonprofits, all properties. So it's not just like the tax properties, it's every single property within the borough will be assessed this fee, as long as they have over 300 square feet of impervious. If you're below 300 square feet, it's considered undeveloped parcel, no fee will be assessed. But the other properties will be charged, it will be a multiple of ERUs, but the cost is the equivalent of $6.50 per 1,000 square feet of impervious area. So non-single family residential properties will be built on that multiple of ERUs based on the exact square footage of impervious on their property.
How are single families gonna be built?
It'll be a flat rate of $10 a month.
Matter how big or whatever, your impervious ground is.
Correct. It's the average, and that's based on the average of impervious area for a residential property. So we took a look at all the residential properties within the borough, and on average, they had, I'm trying to remember exactly, I think it was 16 or 1,700 square feet of impervious area, which got us to that $10 a month on average.
You're probably be perfectly twice. Somebody that doesn't even follow any runoff, plus you're gonna build on an impervious ground that is not, equal to
So.
neighbors.
So I'm happy to discuss this in more depth with you in.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But I do need to tack on what you said, because you're charging residentials
Okay.
higher than non-residentials.
I am happy to discuss this further. I just want to get through this presentation and then we'll do the Q&A session.
Why
Thank you.
bring a pen, so the idea comes and we'll let it out.
Okay, so as part of this program, we have the opportunity to make credits available, which we don't have by funding this through taxes. By implementing the stormwater utility program, we have the opportunity for property owners to be able to reduce their bill amounts because of our credit program. So these are the anticipated credit options, because it hasn't been fully made live yet, but has been approved by the authority. So these will be the credit options available after everything has been formally approved. The options available are peak rate and volume control, structural best management practice. So that is something that is designed as part of a development process. Well, in most cases it is. It doesn't have to be. Any property owner could install a structural BMP or best management practice on their property, but it is a system that is designed to mitigate that peak rate and volume of stormwater. So it's capturing stormwater, holding it there, allowing it to infiltrate, releasing it at a controlled rate, similar to what would have released before any development occurred on the property. A rain barrel rebate will be available, and that is a one-time rebate for property owners who install a rain barrel on their property. In one of their downspouts to offset the cost of purchasing that rain barrel. There will be an education credit that will be made available. That is geared primarily towards schools, although other entities can potentially apply for that. And then a stormwater partnership credit will be made available. And that is the kind of open-ended credit option. So we are anticipating, this being an opportunity for, I have an idea, it doesn't necessarily fall in line with what is available in the credit policy. can we have a discussion to see if that might be worth the credit, and if so, how much? So that's, our opportunity to say, we want to have a conversation with you. We don't want to just say no. Let's talk about it and see if there's a financial offset to the stormwater program that we can then provide to you as a credit.
What is your position that you know the authority to do that?
Okay. Again, I will be happy to answer any questions, and then, well, as soon as I'm done with this, I'm almost done. So the credit and appeal process will be essentially an application by the property owner and all the supporting documentation and a fee potentially, if applicable. The documentation will vary depending on the credit being applied for. For structural BMP credit, we'll need documentation of what is constructed, how it's constructed, what the system is, what it's made of, essentially. The rain barrel can be, potentially just a photo of the rain barrel installed. The fee aspect of this is, as this program continues to be in place, there will be fees to apply for the credits to offset the cost of review. However, they will be waived for an initial period of time. All of those details will be in the credit policy on how long it will be waived, and if it's past that waive point, what that will be as far as the cost to apply. So once the application is submitted, it will be reviewed by the authority. An O&M agreement may be required. Typically, that's only required for the structural BMPs. Things like rain barrels and things won't necessarily require an O&M agreement. And then that credit will be applied to the next billing cycle. So what's next? We are anticipating that the first bills will be mailed out in April 2024. The bills will be issued with the sanitary sewer bill wherever applicable. We are billing to property owners, not tenants. So if it's a rental property, the property owner will receive the stormwater bill if the tenant is paying the sanitary bill. Once that happens, we will begin the stormwater infrastructure assessment and improvement projects. So taking a look at the current condition, we have ideas of where problem areas are based on the assessment that was done, I believe it was back in 2017, something like that. So we have, ideas where to start, but there's a lot that we don't know. So one of the first things we want to do is make sure that we know where all the problem areas are and we're addressing the worst offenders first. And then move forward from there. Okay, so now I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. I do ask that you come up to the podium and speak into the microphone. So that way anybody online is able to hear your questions and that it is also captured for the recording.
Do you have any other means of support besides where the spine was?
We have a microphone that we.
I can't hold it.
I'll hold it for you.
You might as well sit beside me because I have 6 pages. There you go. Okay. Anyone else want to talk first? I might put you to sleep.
We could go through all some stages or.
I'm gonna read the whole thing. Since we last met 1 month ago, I spent time in the library collecting information on the steps I need to take on the process of appealing the borough's assessment of how much rainwater gushes across my lawn and pours into the street. A permit to begin any work must precede any resident's action. In the 35 pages I printed from the borough's stormwater utility fee, I found 4 lines referring to appeals. It was on the bottom of page 21. All appeals are handled in the Court of Common Pleas before a publicly elected judge with plan renew fees, inspection costs, court fees, etc., etc., etc. The majority of the report was given to how a resident must present their proposed project to handle stormwater runoff on their individual properties, all to be given to this judge for his or her decision. Hopefully, this judge will fully understand the whole process on stormwater mitigation. These papers include from this report 6 pages of determined volume requirements for VMPs. On pages 10 through 12 are the mathematical calculations concerning volume controls of rainwater runoff. The formulas begin on page 11 and continues on page 12 with the explanation of runoff curve numbers, coefficients, times of overland concentration flow, etc. And ends on page 31 with the hopefully last of the math equation hurdles are given as samples. For our use are tables 1 and 2 addressing rational runoff coefficients by hydrologic soils group and overland slope percentages, plus a table 2 on roughness coefficients. All the information must be collected on 2 pages of provided worksheets shown on pages 34 and 35. Worksheet tables, site plans showing impervious areas, fees to experts to help us calculate everything, plus to eventually face a panel of 4 lawyers representing the borough before a common pleas court judge is definitely raising the bar against us.
So if
I'm not done. You wait till the end. On page 12, section 19-304B3, the borough has the authority to require that computed existing runoff rates be reconciled with field observations and conditions. I compared this borough's information with that I found from a neighboring Montgomery County municipality, the Upper Merion Sanitary and Stormwater Authority. There were paragraphs referring to their appeals process, all of which inferred a face-to-face conversation with a person who can knowingly discuss your own opposing viewpoints. All this done openly without any court appearance in front of a judge and a he said, she said scenario. I was pleasantly surprised that of the 11 pages published on the matter with the Upper Merion, 5 of those pages were fully and detailed financial statements displayed. They were provided to that township by an independent auditor's report. It explained clearly how much money the township collected, where the money was spent, and most importantly, the size of the township's war chest, better known as free cash flow in corporate terms, and the amount they used this in their investment account, along with the actual income they received from these investment activities. Our borough's report was full of legal speak, with the exception of a couple of pages at the end displaying colored drawings which depict how a proper stormwater management plan should appear. It may interest you to know that Philadelphia had pioneered the introduction of a utility fee in Pennsylvania roughly a decade ago. I'm assuming this is after more than a decade arguing how to prevent a reoccurrence of the Vine Street Expressway from flooding again after the Schuylkill River rose above the storm drain outlets into that river. In layman's terms, that's called reverse flow. Municipalities carry a high failure rate in not conducting studies by experts, professionals in the fields in which these proposed projects can and probably directly affect an outcome, frequently unpleasant in nature. A town with a history of inadequate oversight of its finances, which allowed a borough employee to steal an ungodly amount in recent time, and the total stolen has not been returned to the borough's coffers, unless that is a finder's fee was extracted when the culprit was discovered. This utility fee and appeals process is a wet dream for any municipality proposing it. It is a money-making scheme which keeps giving and giving. Can you and will you assure the respectful residents of this community that the borough shall be fiscally responsible with the cash that these residents, our neighbors, have worked hard to take care of themselves and their families during a 3-year period of extreme stress and financial difficulties? Are you fully aware of the harsh position you are placing on them with this added financial burden? In that case, I request that this panel show the decency and explain how you came to the figure. Well, it's actually I put down 858,000 plus approximately for the first year's annual budget. It goes in your 35-page report. It did refer to fluctuate. The government's official accounting office has rules and procedures which specify the method in providing transparency and full accountability in the allocation of all monetary funds. Will you take us through the steps you took to reach this figure? Is that a total or subtotal annual sum? Since the residents are being held responsible in paying this bill, it is only politely proper to expect this panel to give us a rundown. First, what prompted the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection to enact this action when runaway flooding is not rampant across the state? Why is our borough included in it when many other communities are not? Second, define the actual work orders for which this utility fee was created. What is needed to be done? How do you propose to accomplish these? What specific locations have you determined is needed to be addressed? What supplies do you require? This is a basic piece of information and required as a line item detail in every contract, estimates included. Do all these locations require the exact same remediation? Project breakdown. What's the unit cost? How many units are needed per location? What's the expected start and completion dates? The borough will be greatly inconvenienced by the stormwater management project. Later this year is the last page. The world will be watching the 2024 Summer Olympics. One venue is track and field, of which I enjoy watching the efforts of those competing in the high jump. Athletes from around the world line up to burst full throttle down a short expanse before setting up and propelling themselves backwards over a bar, resting lightly across two uprights. Round after round is conducted, during which the bar is continually raised until there remains only one individual successful in clearing it. This appeal process is similar to the high jump. Every requirement becomes more difficult and possibly costly for the resident and must be presented within 30 days of the borough's decision. Why the rush, you may ask? Well, they have to assess, counter-argue in court, and collect all fees before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court possibly denies the legality of stormwater fees. If all these municipalities in Pennsylvania lose this appeal, the internet page stated they face the potential upheaval in fee structures, as well as millions of dollars at stake should the courts rule it improper. Nationwide, 42 states and Washington, D.C. charge this fee. Among the 60 localities currently charging, bills range from a few dollars per month for homeowners to higher costs for commercial properties. Upper Merion Township, a part of Montgomery County, stormwater bills will be $31 twice a year per billing unit, or $62 a year minimum. However, Conshohocken will bill $10 a month per billing unit, or $120 minimum a year. This is per 1,000 square feet of impervious surface, which include the roof over your head. I'm not happy.
I'm sorry, but I don't remember every single question that was asked in
You
the
have it
document,
taped.
and I will do my best to answer them, at this point. The, first thing that I do want to clarify is I believe that you were looking at the stormwater management ordinance, rather than the stormwater utility program credit appeal process. I don't believe that is available online at this point. The stormwater management ordinance is,
Oh, yes, it is.
substantially more, robust in legal terms because, it is the legal requirements associated with implementing, additional infrastructure on a property and how that infrastructure needs to be managed, as far as stormwater, goes for a second.
Is that universal for every municipality? There's something specific for
There, I will say that the general,
Does Conshohocken have one in place, right?
stormwater management ordinance, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that the stormwater management ordinance, is somewhat general, as far as the baseline requirements. Now,
Where can you find, I guess, on their website?
yeah, it should be on the borough website. If you Google, Conshohocken Borough Stormwater Management Ordinance, I'm sure you can find it. If not, you know, you can call the borough and they can help you get a copy of that. Now, that is, separate from the utility program and stormwater program we're talking about here as far as the appeal process goes. Now, the documents, are related to an extent as far as the credits available for peak rate and volume control, the structural VMPs. Because if you're in compliance with the current ordinance, you're eligible for the maximum credit. However, if you have previously constructed it before the current ordinance, it's not up to the current standards, you're still eligible. It would just be for a portion of the credit, depending on what you are doing with that stormwater, how much you're managing, how effectively. So give me 1 second. The ordinance appeals require court appearances, things of that nature. The program appeals are, you complete the appeal form, submit the documentation that you believe we have incorrect, whether it be the assessment of how much impervious area is on your property or the classification of your property. We can review that information, provide you a determination on that, have a conversation if necessary. If you don't agree with that determination, then you can bring it up to the authority board. And ultimately, if you want to take it to court, you can as an individual, but that is not the process that you are required to do as far as submitting an appeal for the stormwater utility program.
What about all these runoff curve numbers, coefficients, overland concentration flows,
Again,
and the different tables you mentioned?
that is,
All the formulas that is said online is required
it is the
before.
It is the stormwater management ordinance. The formulas that are within that document, the runoff coefficients, all of those numbers are the requirements to calculate what you need to install and how much stormwater you need to manage. Those are all just the math of managing stormwater. It is separate from what we are implementing here as far as the appeal process, the credit process, all those things. That is, I am building a new hotel on this site. That is the requirements for me to mitigate the impervious area that I am constructing on this site and how I need to mitigate that. And if I disagree with it, then it goes through that appeals process that you were referencing, the court cases, all of those things as part of that. This is not the assessment of the stormwater utility fee. That is the stormwater management ordinance and is essentially, for all intents and purposes in this conversation, a completely unrelated topic.
This is concerning when someone wants to actually install infrastructure on their residential property. It's for a small site plan. The pages that were in that 35-page printout I did specifies the depth, talking about a dry well, the width, volume, all sorts of things that I am not capable in providing. It also talks about how a rain garden is done and all sorts of things like that, the length of a channel, the width of a channel, all of this,
Yes.
which I did and completed 15 years ago.
Okay, and
Well before this was done, and I did not at that time ever think I would need to compile and keep all the plans, all the photographs I took, and keep a record day to day, year by year of how I did it.
Okay.
And it cannot be shown by an aerial survey.
you're right, we are not able to tell
But
what
there's
it,
no metal in it.
we are not
It's
able to tell.
all 4-inch flexible perforated tubing.
Yes, we are unable to tell what is constructed under the ground from an aerial image. However, in order to be eligible for a credit, you would need to apply for the credit. Once that documentation becomes available, it will be posted on the website once everything is finalized. And as the program is implemented, it will be one of the first, if not the first documents available online. You can reference that document. It will tell you what you are required to submit as part of the credit
Which I
application.
do not understand.
Okay,
I'm not an engineer.
sure. Sir, I believe you have a question.
Peak rate volume control.
I'm sorry, can you talk into the mic?
I'm sorry, the peak rate volume control product, that's for basically new houses and new development. The way that you kind of explained it, am I wrong?
So older houses are eligible to install stormwater controls, on their property. However, I will say it is going to be more typical that a new construction is required to install those. Whereas the old construction was not necessarily required. But that's not saying that a home that was built, previous to the last decade or two, that doesn't have those stormwater controls in place isn't eligible to install them.
You're actually rewarding the reason why I got here. The excess development.
Well, they're offsetting their impacts through the required.
You're rewarding new development. Basically.
We're not,
Yes, you
we're offsetting the costs, that they are offsetting to our stormwater program. Because they are managing the stormwater on their site that they are producing from the impervious area on their property. It's an offset that they have, versus a home that doesn't have that stormwater VMP associated with it, that we are able to give a reduced rate because they have a reduced impact on our system.
You haven't been traveling around looking at some of the things that are being developed, obviously.
Have you already calculated what the fees would be for the non-residential properties
We have, yes,
on a property by property basis?
yes.
Okay, and the reason I ask is I'm a member of the finance team, Conshohocken United Methodist Church. It's on the corner of West Sixth and Fayette Street. It involves a church building and a parsonage. And I don't know that they've been notified or they know what's coming down the pipe in terms of what the fee will be. Can they find that out?
Yeah, if they reach out to, who would be the best contact at?
They probably me ultimately, and I can find that out for you.
Okay.
I give you my card earlier.
I have it.
Now, I will say that any numbers that you receive prior to the official implementation of this will have the caveat of estimate in front of it, albeit they will be, I would be confident in those numbers.
It's all right. So it's initial estimate. And then when do you think the paperwork will be established for making credit?
So the authority has approved the credit policy and that manual associated with it. However, the ownership of the system has not been transferred from the borough to the authority yet. I believe it's intended that will be in the next month or two. I don't have the specific dates. I'm not part of those conversations, but I would anticipate it at that point or around that point.
And you had mentioned for non-residential properties, a rate of $6.50, was it?
It was, give me 1 second here.
Maybe six
Six
fifty.
650 per 1,000 square feet. Now that will be, if you want to estimate it based on, if you know how much impervious area is on your property, it's rounded to the nearest 100, but it will be built on multiples of year use, so there might be a slight difference in, what you calculate using that 650 per 1,000, but it will be pretty close.
Thank
May
you.
I give you good news, Mr. Bowens? What is going forward in this Pennsylvania Supreme Court, one of the arguments is whether or not this utility fee is a fee or a tax. If it's a tax, your church is tax exempt. The reason they started calling it a fee because universities and others took them to court because they would have to spend upwards and above $130,000 on their properties. So if it's determined it's a tax, you win.
So is this before the Supreme Court now?
It is now. It's since 2023, the beginning of 2023.
Thank you.
Yes. It's for-
So ownership has not changed yet. You guys are going through all this enactment to do this, and that Supreme Court case has not been heard yet. What happens if you guys collect money that gets overturned. What happens then?
So, that
I
is.
was wish the board members would hear.
Sure.
Because
What I will say to that point, is I will not discuss the legality of implementing this or that case. I'm not a lawyer, so it is not my position to discuss that. But what I will say is there are substantial differences, with the case that is being discussed at the Supreme Court level, versus how a majority of these utilities are being implemented.
what municipalities in our general area have implemented this?
Well, Philadelphia has a stormwater utility fee.
Marion voted on it, but they never implemented it because they're waiting for the Supreme Court case to be over. I mean, I just, and I know this is a borough issue, but
there are.
lawsuits could really come and affect this in a big way if this thing goes the other way.
There are a lot of other municipalities within the state, especially in the south central area of the state that have implemented these that I personally have worked with. I don't have a complete list of all the municipalities in the state.
What's the closest one that you've worked with that is enacting this?
That I personally have worked with.
Yeah.
Uh,
Company.
probably Stilton Borough would be the one closest that I've worked with outside of Harrisburg. I personally have worked with, a handful in that area. I'm currently working with Penn Salem. I'm currently working with, Upper Chichester.
You won't get a refund, it'll be a credit, remember what you said earlier? And a credit towards what? It doesn't say.
It's a reduction in your bill.
The Borough of Conshohocken is selling, quote unquote, the stormwater system. That, what is it exactly they're selling?
It's the transfer of the stormwater system. So the, all of
That
this,
system and entity in itself, or is it just like a department within the borough?
I'm not sure I understand that question. Can
What is
you,
it you're selling?
the infrastructure,
Just the infrastructure.
correct?
Okay.
And I would like to clarify, I personally am not selling
Okay.
it.
Ed, I guess, how much are they selling it for? How much you guys buying it for?
I think it's a nominal.
Phenomenal, yeah. That's evasive.
It's it's essentially a transfer of the infrastructure. So it is not a
Who's gonna maintain this? Who's
valuation.
gonna be maintaining the infrastructure?
The authority will be responsible for maintaining the infrastructure.
Are they gonna hire staff to do it, or are they gonna contract it out?
Depends on the, work that needs to be completed, work that needs to be contracted out will be
In your-
contracted out.
in your projections and so forth, have you figured that out? Have you contacted?
Yep, so there are larger scale projects we're assuming will be contracted out, regular.
Obviously, it's gotta be day-to-day basis.
Right, regular maintenance of the system, and smaller scale projects will be, done by, staff, at the borough, it's intended. That as essentially a contracted, as essentially a contracted, entity, because they have all the staffing and equipment necessary.
Why are they selling the infrastructure in the first place?
Because they do not have the funding ability, to maintain the system as it's necessary to maintain.
So it really is a tax, that if they could tax it, they would keep it.
Well, they are taxing, the,
But, I mean, I guess,
That's how it's-
I
that's how
guess
it's
this is
currently-
another borough question, with all the development that has happened since I've been here. I'm sure the rates have gone up, so.
yeah, I'm not sure what the tax rate increases have been over the last few years. I'm not
So
aware of that.
the authority is buying the infrastructure from the borough and then gonna contract out the borough workers to maintain.
For some aspects of it, correct.
What would be those aspects?
Regular inspection of the infrastructure, so going out, like clearing inlets off after a heavy rainfall or in the fall when leaves are falling and clogging inlets, keeping those clear.
Which they currently do.
Yes. Replacement of inlets, replacement of small scale pipe runs, things of that.
Borough likely would, small ones.
Small scale projects, yes.
They do that now.
Well.
Right, but they are not doing that in,
But why
A
can't the
capacity-
borough get the funding and you can get the funding?
that is a legal question. That, again, I'm not able to answer that. They are able to get the funding through a general tax increase. Which,
The borough decided to do this, that's the number one. The borough, they say, to do it. As a result, the Borough of Conshohocken Authority evaluated, considered alternative methods for funding the stormwater. The authority has determined that the cost of the stormwater program most equitably met for stormwater. So that's where we're at here. I just wanted to give you a real life example and see how this was going to be handled. So, and I'm hoping you know about it, but maybe you don't. So between Fifth and Seventh Avenue, you have a variety of commercial on Fash, variety of commercial places right across the church. You have a 7-Eleven that's been there for years. It's been impervious for as long as I can remember. There's an office building behind that paved over whatever impervious surface or pervious surface they previously had. You have a CVS that used to be in Acme, decided to do the same exact thing. I doubt they implemented any stormwater management best practices. I mean, I can tell because with stormwater management best practices, they didn't do it. That water runoff has caused huge issues for those people living on the east side of Sixth Avenue. Probably taken away some yards. The borough had just recently redone the curbing. No best management practices for put in this place. So that was just done, that was just paid for. If I was looking at it, I would say that's one of the first places that would, so my question for you is, are you starting at the top of the hill or are you starting at the bottom of the hill? Starting at the river or you're starting at the source? And have you already determined that? You're setting a plan, you're setting a fee. I'm assuming you have some of that thought out.
yeah, so, I'll start by saying that is a type of projects that, we would be able to fund through this program, and take corrective action, whether it be, I'm not intensely familiar with that site or what the exact problems are or anything of that nature. It has been brought to my attention that that's an issue, as far as, flooding concerns go. But whether it's needing additional, inlets, needing larger pipe or whatever the solution might be, I don't necessarily know that at this point. But this gives us the ability to look into it, see what the issues are, make the corrections, that are required to remedy that situation. Now, as far as where we're starting, closest to the river or up at the top of the hill, it really depends on the severity of the project, and what makes sense. So the intent will be to take care of the situations that are the most extreme, most problematic, whether it be a health and safety issue, a property issue, or just a general concern about the longevity of the infrastructure. We will evaluate all of those and figure out what the worst offenders are, and take action on those worst offenders as a priority. So where we're starting first, I can't necessarily say. The first thing that we're going to do is a farther assessment of the infrastructure. We will have, we know that there's areas where pipes are dilapidated, they're in need of repair and replacement. We know that there's areas where pipes are not sized correctly with the current volume of water that's flowing to them. We know that there are areas that are flooding, causing flooding in people's backyards. All of these things are going to be evaluated further, and a plan will be developed for them. We also will have the ability to submit citizen concerns, to bring anything that we aren't aware of to our attention. So that way we can do an evaluation, see what's causing the issue and what can be done to remedy that issue.
So, all right, which is great. So your advisory at that point, almost advisory committee to the borough, or are you saying you're acting as the authority at that point? Would the authority be able to go back to, let's say, for example, a CBS and say, you need to implement these BMPs, you must comply to this at this point, even though it'd be grandfathered in, or?
Yeah, I will say that is a legal question, but generally, you cannot require a property that was constructed at the time in accordance with an ordinance, a stormwater management ordinance. You cannot require a property to remedy that to be in compliance with the current stormwater ordinance. It is grandfathered into whatever ordinance was in
So I think-
place at that
So
time.
I think there's a potential, that's a potential mess. But it's, I guess it's not for you, that would be for the borough. That corner property would have so maybe they build a 2-foot wall, which probably wouldn't meet the zoning requirement. We have the variance on that to push the river further down. So
So what I will
don't wanna
say.
Get into that, but it sounds like that, well, I'm gonna say it as a citizen living right down the street. It's obvious what the issue is, and the issue's above, it just goes uphill.
Sure.
And if the person above me is not taking care of their storm, I'm in trouble.
Right.
So I've gotta start at the top, and I wanna make sure that's happening. I would advise everybody not to pay a fee until we're sure that happens.
Well, in that situation, how you explained it to me, it would be a starting at the top, situation. Now, as far as the overall borough, there is, pipes that are functioning in their current format. However, and what I say by that is sizing and locations. However, they are not functioning, without having the degradation aspect. So, we need to repair and replace them so there aren't additional issues. So if there's something like that happening at the bottom of the hill, we will address that as it makes sense to address. Now, in a situation like that, start at the top, absolutely. The other aspect of this that I will say is because we have this credit policy, that will be put in place, it does provide incentive for property owners such as the one that you are referencing to install a BMP on their property to reduce the rate that they are paying into the program.
And will that rate be available, knowing that all residential properties taking that $10 fee, or the $6.50 per thousand? Will we be able to see what those commercial properties are paying around the borough?
That's not something that I personally am able to answer. I believe it would be,
And
information.
I couldn't answer that question.
That's-
I don't know the legality of that. I mean,
Why not? You can publish the tax
Seems like it
rates
should be public.
of everybody, so you compare yours with your neighbors.
I
That's online.
That's
I will
why
say,
I'd be curious about
you
that.
will have the information necessary to calculate an estimated fee for a property. If you are able to measure how much impervious area they have.
So the other question, or the other, just another real life example. I know it's a problem. We all know it's a problem. We all know our street is polluted by the runoff. Commercial property sees 1,000 cars a day, where my home sees 1 or 2. Doubt that's taken into effect, how much sediment or how much pollutants are actually laying or being deposited down. I don't know if that's ever been, it's studied when it enters the system. I don't know if it's studied prior, but bringing that up. The other thing is, if you already have these things in place, right? If I already have a retention basin on site, if most of I have 3 properties in the borough. One is failing infrastructure. Because of that, all the water goes straight to the basement, doesn't exit for days. So it's a retention basin. The other parts are adding bars back, retention basin, letting the water run off and taken up by the trees on site. Those things are all done. How do we go back? Is that all going to be part of your plan in the red? How does that get worked out?
Was it designed as a stormwater management facility?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, one tree is a stormwater piece, you know what I mean?
Sure, but that's
I
not,
can make that
it,
argument.
it needs to
Trying
be,
see
it needs to be quantifiable in accordance with the stormwater management ordinance.
So that's,
So we need to be able to quantify the peak rate impacts and the volume impacts, to be able to provide, that level of.
so you are gonna need essentially what she's all in the ordinance, the
Yes.
stormwater. ordinance.
The calculation.
Size, capacity.
Correct.
all.
It's a hot lot higher math than I had in college.
What if it's, what if it's so what if the pervious pavement? So I imagine from your overhead view, you're not able to tell whether it's pervious concrete or impervious concrete.
Correct.
So is that
So-
bringing someone out on site or how does that?
So if there's a pervious paver or pervious asphalt or something of that nature, it is still considered to be an impervious surface because it is creating runoff. It's just managing that runoff on site, essentially right where it falls, it's being managed at that location. It is a creditable BMP. However, we would need the design specifications for the material utilized, depths of the storage underneath, and what fill was used for that storage. What type of, silk soccer or fabric was laid down before the stone to provide the volume reduction area that the pavers would be flowing into. But it is a credible BMP. We just need all of the design specs essentially for that.
Who's reviewing that? Borough or?
The authority would. do that.
I have a question.
No,
Were you here
Hold
at
on,
the
we'll
last
get you,
meeting?
appreciate that.
Were you here at the last meeting?
I was not.
Anyone here at the last meeting? Oh, darn it. One of the things that got us, a number of us so upset were the things that were mentioned and discussed as a possible project in the borough. Digging up Sutcliffe Park, excavating it, running pipe into it, making it a containment for holding liquids. Now, if there's filtration in there to filter out the pollution, that's different. But this, they were making it seem like it isn't. They were just gonna hold rainwater for God knows how long. Put a cover on it, cover it with soil, and what? Let the kids play on it? There have been instances in the past over the years where this kind of stuff leaks. It destroys the neighborhood around it, property values drop. People can get sick from it depending on the pollutants that are in it. Other things that they were mentioning, it freaked the daylights out of me because I didn't know what they were talking about and they left too much to your imagination. They did mention, curb cuttings. They mentioned new inlets. They mentioned new pipes. They didn't say where. They've already changed all the pipes in the neighborhood. I thought that Aqua did it back then, a couple of years ago. I was corrected last month. They said, no, the borough did it. So I asked, well, you did it. Why didn't you put in the correct size back then? There was no answer. They didn't know anything of that sort. So all these other projects they're talking about, I don't want Sutcliffe Park dug up and God knows what is going to be.
We have to do that project.
Pardon?
That, we have to do that project as part of the PRP requirement. That is the project that needs to be implemented to be in compliance with the MS4 program, the state requirements and the federal requirements. That is
They
not a
could do it on
project.
the other side of Falwell Lane and leave the kids playground alone.
The project is being implemented at that site because it is determined to be the best available site for the reductions that we are required to have.
You're putting waste in it, right?
It is stormwater. It is not any sort of sanitary effluent or anything of that nature.
You
It is
don't
what
know
is
that.
running down the street and
You
being
don't
captured.
know what is in there. The recycling center, that's up for sale. I looked that up. Some of the things they handle was battery acid. How can you be assured that the rainwater pollution from that site does not run down into your pipes in there or other things of that nature?
Well, that's downstream from Sutcliffe Park. Not
There
going
can
on,
be,
no.
but the way they were talking, they'd be pumping stuff all over.
We
They
have
didn't know what they were
Nobody
talking
said.
about.
Okay, ma'am, I was the one discussing that project. I assure you, I said nothing about pumps.
Get a copy of your thing online by any chance?
Absolutely. I was gonna mention, I see some of these look like they're getting ready to leave. If you come up and grab one of my cards, my email's on there, as well as my cell phone number. Anything you need, anything I can do for you, anything I can answer for you. Like I said, that's my cell phone number on it. It's not the office. You're not gonna get bounced around. You can email me your questions. Be happy to look in and get your answers.
How about financial papers, an explanation, a line by line detail, everything you're doing, so we can see how you're spending the money.
That will be made clear once it is finalized.
Are you sure?
I promise. That's the
Borough?
same, that's the same way we operate the wastewater system. We're gonna run it the same way, transparency.
There will be audits and everything.
Well, I can't, what can I do to make money? That's what I wanna do. I wanna
Stop
earn,
charging me when
I
I don't even have any water service.
I don't understand how I can do
I'm
that.
being charged sewer bills. In an apartment, no one's been there since 2014. The water had been shut off at the curb, and I'm still being charged.
This is the
Because it's
stormwater,
all-
this is the stormwater meeting. We're gonna keep the topics related to stormwater.
Isn't that lovely how they avoid?
Well, I would like to address one of your comments earlier too, when it was me you were talking to last month or in November. As to the sizing of the new pipes. I just want to explain to you that this is brand new. We haven't even physically taken over the utility yet. We've had nothing to do with anything before, so we had no say in what pipes were replaced, the size. That's why I couldn't answer. I wasn't avoiding anything.
So that was you.
Yeah, but I don't know because I wasn't involved. So moving forward, once we do take ownership and we start planning projects and once we get on the ground and start running with this, then we'll be able to answer these questions.
I can understand that, but can you also understand, by you not explaining that, we saw that as a different way that you are avoiding talking to us?
Well, no, I said that to you because I remember you were at the podium at that time and I said, I can't answer that question. I said, I wasn't around when those pipes, that predates.
And I remember my response, what is this, 2001, where one department doesn't talk to another? And I'm referring to our defense department when 9/11 occurred,
Well,
when they
also,
didn't talk to each other.
all right, well, just to be fair, a lot of people don't understand this, but the borough and the borough authority are two totally separate entities. And everybody thinks that we're a department of the borough, but we're not. So technically, so recently, we really didn't interact.
I'm glad that you're keeping it separate, because that was not a question they could answer the last time. Because I don't want the sewer authority to have their hands on any part of it.
Well, that's what's gonna happen though, the sewer authority is taking over the stormwater. No, I understand you have feelings about something that happened 20 years ago.
It's ongoing.
Well, no, wait,
For my bills, I get them.
no, I'm talking when you mentioned about something that happened a long time ago, that makes you mistrust us. A lot of checks have been put into place since then. I'm proud to say, I've only been here, I'm in my 11th year now. And I'm proud to say that there are so many checks in place. It's almost, sometimes it's tiring just to get a check prepared to pay people.
I've been here 20-some years. And answering what you had mentioned to that gentleman there about things that have been in process before this all began, does that mean because my home is over 50 years old, mine is grandfathered in?
As far as grandfather and how.
The construction of a brick sidewalk, things like that?
You will
Which
not.
is not impervious because the lawn had grown over it, and I have pictures of it. Yeah, it couldn't possibly grow with all the weeds that come through since then, since they took up the lawn and found out there was bricks there. That's growing, and that was one of the points that I was told, that if weeds, plants, other material are growing between like paving stones, patio stones, things like that, that is not mortared, it then is allowed and considered pervious.
Just
It's
the
not
area,
concrete, which is
just the area
specified
where
in
the
some
vegetation
townships.
is, wherever a brick would be located will be considered an impervious area.
Then I have to dig up that whole sidewalk.
If you would like to not be assessed for it and you're not single-family residential property, if you're single-family residential property, you're being charged a flat rate.
I am the only one living on a 2-apartment building. It is now single because I had stopped in 2018 the license.
Is the land use code Does the land use code from the county correspond with the single family residence? That is how we are assessing this. So if you have a problem with how you're being assessed, submit an appeal, we can look into it, but it will likely require you to change the land use code according to the county.
I tried to do that with the sewer authority. They told me in order to stop the bills, I had to dig up the streets, have someone come in, slice down through the connection from the sewer line,
So-
and then
So, ma'am,
pay
ma'am,
it.
we've had all these conversations at the last meeting. I would like to give these gentlemen an opportunity to ask questions, should you have any questions? Okay, please.
Thank you.
For the rain barrel
Mhm.
credit. If I put 3 rain barrels up, is that just one credit or?
It's a one-time rebate, for the rain barrel. So if you already have rain barrels or you're building a rain barrel yourself, it'll be a reduction, to your bill. However, it's intended to be the cost of the rain barrel or as close as possible. Obviously, there's different options, to offset the purchase of the rain barrel.
Okay, so it would be 1 month that I would get a credit for.
It would, correct, it would be, well, depending on how much your bill is, it might show up over the course of multiple bills. But it would be a one-time, rebate to your account.
Would I be able to get help from the borough in filling
Ma'am,
out these
ma'am.
forms?
He is
I have
asking
another
questions.
question.
Okay, thank
There's I'm not gonna name the business,
Sure.
because I'll probably shy. But there's a business that already has a stormwater management system on the property. So could they apply for credit for this?
If they have a stormwater facility on the property?
Yeah.
Correct, they could. Now, the amount of credit that they would receive would be, based upon the reduction
Yeah, I
that
figure
they're,
that's
that they're
all.
realizing.
I figure all that would have to get figured out, but.
Correct.
There is.
They would be eligible if it is something that can be quantified, as far as the rate reductions and volume reductions achieved by the beginning.
So you've mentioned, a lot about resizing pipes, putting in new pipes, which I understand. What projects would actually need stormwater?
So that's the project, at Sutcliffe Park. So that is the PRP project, the pollution reduction plan project, that will, it's going to be an underground infiltration, system. So to be clear, my, company, we were not involved in developing that project. It was done by the borough's engineer. So the specifics of that, I do not know. I know, rough sizing and estimated costs for implementing. But the project will essentially be taking rainwater from the surrounding area, piping it into a underground infiltration system. So essentially, think of a large cistern type situation that will hold the water, release it at a slower rate, also allow infiltration of that water back into the groundwater.
And where in the park is this to be located?
I do not know the specifics of the location of it. But my understanding is that it isn't going to impact any of the equipment over there.
you. We know both locations, Sunset Park?
I'm talking about where they're going to put this, system. at
Yes,
some-
Sunset Park.
Yeah, in the park, yeah.
Well, where,
There is a water.
There's a
Well,
lower
most people-
field.
What most people don't realize is. What
Thank
most
you.
people don't realize is, when you go to Sutcliffe Park, you can run off of 10th Avenue. If you go left, there's paid parking there.
Yes,
But if you go right and go down further, there's a stone parking area. there.
Yes.
yes, I know that.
That's Sutcliffe Park.
Yep.
I don't know if that's correct.
I'm not sure, to be honest. Like I said, I wasn't
That
involved in
would
the
be-
design of that project. So,
That's often alley behind the people's homes,
Right,
where they have access to their garages back there.
right. So the stone parking is.
It's a very small one.
did you guys have any other questions?
I have no other.
I can answer my,
I'm going to the courthouse and see.
Correct.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Ma'am, did you have any other questions you would like to ask before we wrap this up?
You would want to hear my comment right now out loud.
Okay, that's fine with me. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.